$971 billion. That is what Bloomberg says Elon Musk is worth as I'm recording this, which leaves him exactly 29 billion short of a number no human being in recorded history has ever touched. $1 trillion. And here's the part that gave me chills when I checked the calendar. The answer to this video's title might arrive while you're watching it. Because this very morning, a brand new ticker symbol, SPCX, lights up on the Nasdaq for the first time. SpaceX, the rocket company Elon Musk nearly bankrupted himself to keep alive, has just priced the largest IPO in the history of money. $75 billion raised in a single offering at a valuation of $1.77 trillion. And Musk owns roughly 42% of it. So today I'm asking the trillion-dollar question, literally. Will Elon Musk become the world's first trillionaire? I've been through the filings, the forecasts, and the math, and I'll give you my honest verdict at the end. Trust me. The answer is closer and stranger than you think. But first, let me show you where $971 billion actually lives. Because here's the thing people get wrong about billionaires. There is no vault. Musk's fortune is almost entirely stock in the companies he runs, and right now it sits in two towers. Tower 1, SpaceX, founded in 2002. 3 failed rocket launches and nearly dead by 2008. Musk says he had to borrow money from friends just to pay rent. And as of yesterday, priced at $1.77 trillion, instantly one of the 10 most valuable companies in America, worth more than Tesla itself. The IPO sold 555.6 million shares at exactly $135 apiece. That is a $75 billion raise, the biggest stock market debut ever, well over double Saudi Aramco's old record. Bloomberg pegs Musk's stake at around $688 billion. Let me put that in perspective. His SpaceX shares alone are worth more than double the entire fortune of Oracle's Larry Ellison, the world's number 3 richest man. And inside SpaceX now sits something else, his artificial intelligence empire. In February 2026, SpaceX acquired xAI, the maker of Grok, in an all-stock deal that valued the combination at $1.25 trillion. CNBC called it the biggest merger of all time. Grok now reaches roughly 600 million monthly users across the X and Grok apps. And by some measures, it has become the 3rd most used chatbot in America. One rocket company, one AI lab, one social network, all under a single ticker. And thanks to a dual-class share structure, Musk keeps more than 80% of the votes. Tower 2, Tesla, market value roughly $1.5 trillion. Musk's stock there is worth about $290 billion by Barron's count. And in December 2025, after a 7-year court war, the Delaware Supreme Court reinstated his famous 2018 pay package, the one a judge had thrown out. When shareholders approved it, it was worth $56 billion. By the time Tesla finally delivered the shares this April, it was valued at around $139 billion. The largest payout in corporate history, and somehow, it is not even his biggest deal. We'll get to that. To appreciate how absurd this morning really is, rewind the tape with me. In 2002, Musk walked away from the PayPal sale with about $180 million. In January 2021, he passed Jeff Bezos to become the richest person on Earth, at $185 billion. In December 2024, he became the first human being ever worth $400 billion. 18 months later, he is knocking on the door of $1 trillion. There has simply never been a money story that moves this fast. So that's the empire. Now, the case for yes. And I want to start with a date. September 10th, 2025, 9 months ago. Because on that day, Elon Musk wasn't even the richest man alive. Oracle's Larry Ellison, after his company's stock exploded 36% in a single session, its best day since 1992, gained $101 billion before the closing bell and briefly snatched the crown. Musk that day, $385 billion. Now think about what's happened since, from $385 billion in September to $971 billion this week. That is roughly $590 billion added in 9 months. Call it $2 billion a day, every day, weekends included. And depending on whose calculator you trust, he may have already crossed the line. Barron's counted his 6.4 billion SpaceX shares at the IPO price, added his Tesla stock, and got $1.1 trillion. Bloomberg is more conservative, 971. Forbes sits around 980, which means the very first trade of SPCX this morning could settle the argument. If the stock simply opens a few percent above its IPO price, and demand is so hot that index funds are projected to own 30% of the available shares within 15 days, Bloomberg's ticker rolls past 1 trillion and history is made before lunch. But here's what convinces me this isn't a one-day story. In November 2025, over 75% of Tesla's shareholders approved a brand new pay package for Musk, worth up to $1 trillion on its own. No salary, no cash bonus. Just 12 tranches of stock that only vest if he hits numbers that sound like science fiction. Growing Tesla from $1.5 trillion to $8.5 trillion in market value. 20 million vehicles delivered, 10 million self-driving subscriptions, 1 million robotaxis in commercial operation, 1 million humanoid robots, and $400 billion in core earnings. If he somehow does all of it, he collects up to 12% more of Tesla. And this one contract alone would mint a second trillion. The forecasters saw this coming, by the way. Back in September 2024, a report from Informer Connect Academy projected that Musk would become the world's first trillionaire by 2027, based on his fortune compounding at 110% a year. People laughed at that report. Today, it looks slow. The same study says Gautam Adani, Nvidia's Jensen Huang, and Indonesia's Prajogo Pangestu could follow by 2028, with Bernard Arnault around 2030. The trillionaire era isn't coming, friends. It's scheduled. Now, the cold shower, because there is a serious case for no, and it starts with a fact most people forget. Elon Musk is also the only human being in history to lose roughly $200 billion. Between late 2021 and early 2023, as Tesla's stock collapsed, his fortune fell by at least $180 billion. Guinness World Records certified it as the largest loss of personal fortune ever recorded. Paper wealth runs in both directions. Larry Ellison learned that lesson this very year. After topping the rich list in September at $393 billion, his fortune fell by nearly $200 billion from its peak. By April, he had slipped all the way to 6th place. The same volatility that builds these numbers can erase them in a single quarter. And SpaceX, for all its glory, has a secret hiding in its own IPO filings. It loses money. The company lost almost $5 billion in 2025 and another $4.3 billion in just the first quarter of this year. The biggest hole is the AI division it swallowed, reportedly $6.4 billion in losses last year, against just $3.2 billion in revenue. Starlink, the satellite internet arm, is the profitable star, with about $4.4 billion in operating profit. But the rockets to Mars business burns cash by design. That is why Morningstar published a verdict that should make every buyer pause this morning. They believe SpaceX at $1.77 trillion is overvalued, by roughly half, and the structure of this IPO is unusually fragile. Only around 4% of the company is actually available to trade. And unlike a normal IPO, insiders are allowed to start selling 20% of their shares just weeks after listing, the moment the first quarterly results land. If a wave of early sellers meets a disappointed market, that ticker can travel down just as fast as up. A 30% slide in SPCX would erase more than $200 billion from Musk's net worth and push the trillionaire moment back by years, not weeks. As for that trillion-dollar Tesla package, the milestones are brutal. $8.5 trillion in market value is nearly 6 times what Tesla is worth today. Bigger than any company that has ever existed. 1 million robo-taxis is roughly 1,000 times what's on the road right now. Possible? Maybe. Guaranteed. Not even close. So where does this leave him in the sweep of history? Guinness World Records still lists John D. Rockefeller as the richest person ever, adjusted for inflation. His $900 million in 1913 translates to roughly $630 billion in today's money, though economists argue endlessly about the right way to convert it. And by some measures, no modern fortune compares to owning 90% of America's oil. And the medieval Emperor Mansa Musa of Mali? Historians literally gave up putting a number on his gold. The chroniclers of his era simply wrote that his wealth was impossible to describe. But on the simple scoreboard, dollars on the screen, Elon Musk has already passed every fortune ever recorded in the modern age. And a trillion deserves a moment of awe. $1 trillion is more than the entire annual economic output of Switzerland. If you had spent $1 million every single day since the days of Julius Caesar, more than 2,000 years ago, you still would not have spent $1 trillion. So, will Elon Musk become the world's first trillionaire? Here is my honest verdict. By Barron's math, he arguably already is one. By Bloomberg's, he needs 29 billion more, about 2 weeks at his recent pace, or one good opening trade this morning. Short of a full-blown market crash, this stopped being a question of if a long time ago. It's a question of which day the ticker rolls over, and there is a very real chance the answer is today, while you were watching this. One man, a rocket company priced higher than any debut in stock market history, a robot army on order, and a number with 12 zeros. Whatever you think of Elon Musk, you and I are alive for a milestone no generation of humans has ever witnessed. If you want to be here the day it happens, and for a front row seat to the Trillionaire Era's yachts, jets, and palaces, you know what to do. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.